Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. I'm so excited that you're here. Welcome to the Allen County Public Library. My name is Beth Boatwright. I'm our Director of Community Partnerships and Programs. And some amazing ACPL staff have brought this presentation to you today. ACPL is here to enrich our community through lifelong learning and discovery, and that mission includes supporting local businesses and students and community members who want to discover new insights and learn new skills so that our workplaces and our city will be more welcoming and inclusive. We're so excited to welcome Dr. Kristal Walker to the ACPL today. I'm kind of bouncing. I'm really very excited about this. As we kick off Black History Month, Dr. Walker will be teaching us more about cultural intelligence and how we can leverage this skill set to develop a more supportive, inclusive workplace culture, especially for African American employees. We'd also like to invite you to join us in the theater lobby directly after the talk today for an opportunity to connect with each other as like-minded people who have just learned new things. We'll have some delicious snacks from Elijah's Bakery to share as well. So let me introduce our speaker. Dr. Kristal Walker has worked in the learning, leadership, and organizational development space for over 15 years, helping clients engage people, apply processes, and implement technology to improve human and organizational performance. She currently serves as the Vice President of Employee Wellbeing at Sweetwater Sound, where she's responsible for crafting and leading wellness, diversity and inclusion, and training initiatives. She's also a training industry courses instructor, which is very, very cool if you look it up. She teaches other people to be excellent trainers and has even authored a new diversity and inclusion workshop. Dr. Walker is the real deal. She's a wife, a mother, truly one of the best in the business to bring us this learning opportunity today. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Kristal Walker.
Good afternoon, everybody. How's to the first day of Black History Month? Can we celebrate that and get a little bit more excited about Black History Month? I'm thrilled to be here today. I want to first say thank you to Allen County Public Library Services, to the city of Fort Wayne for embracing me and my family. We've been here now for 2 years, migrated from the West Coast, so you can imagine how I'm doing in this snow. But I have met some amazing people while I've been here. And I just want to say that it's not too many audiences and organizations that you have an opportunity to engage with that really want to hear what you have to say. And so I wanted to just sort of kick off this Black History Month talking about a very important topic that I think is overlooked. In some cases can still come across as being very young in terms of research. But this whole concept of cultural intelligence is important, and I think it's definitely worth diving into a little bit more. So my hope is today that I have an opportunity to share some new insight on a very useful tool or framework of what it'll take for you to engage more effectively, not just with African American communities, but any community that share a cultural background or a cultural norm that is different from your own. And so that is my goal today. I am grateful to my Sweetwater family who came out. If you could just raise your hand real quick, I want to show y'all off one good time. Thank you. I've worked with these amazing HR professionals every single day, and as part of our role in Sweetwater, we do try to make sure that all of our processes are equitable, that we're inclusive, that we create a sense of engagement and belonging to individuals who work here every single day, who are from the city of Fort Wayne and surrounding cities, as well as those who are transplanting to work for us. And so I can't do what I do without them being here. They are sacrificing an hour to come and hear me speak and support all as well. So I just wanted to give them a shout out. I think it's definitely due. And also to all of you who are sacrificing your hour today to come in and listen to a woman that you've never heard of before, but has a little bit of something to say as it relates to this topic on cultural intelligence and how we can use such a topic to engage African American communities, specifically given it's Black History Month. So before we get started, I do want to take a moment to recognize the sign of the times that we're in today. And I would love to ask all of you if you will join me in just taking a short moment of silence to recognize the untimely and the unfortunate passing of Mr. Tyree Nichols to police brutality in Memphis, Tennessee. Thank you so much. Our hearts are with his family, his friends, those who are mourning his loss, as today is also the day that he is being buried and memorialized. But I also think that is one of the reasons why topics like this are essential for us to continue educating everyone within our communities, our circles of influence, on what it really means to create this concept. We're familiar with this language because of the work of United Front, but this whole concept of shared humanity. It's super important, and I think it's one that it's a language that isn't disappearing anytime soon. And so as we start to consider what it's like to embrace this life here, and what the many challenges some of our folks may be up against, some that you may or may not even be aware of, I think it's important that we take moments like this to just self-reflect, to be grateful that we do have individuals within our society who are standing for justice and standing to make a change, but also who have a very zero tolerance level for behavior like this that leads to the death of anybody. And so thank you again for joining me in a moment of silence for Tyree and his family. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Dr. Kristal Walker. I've shared on many occasions, many platforms that I've had an opportunity to speak on, that I am originally from Los Angeles, California. I love everything about the West Coast, especially the weather around this time of year. Nevertheless, I have learned how to put on a jacket, get comfortable, and play outside with my 6-year-old in the snow. And I can tell you that my transition here has been amazing. I've met some of the most amazing individuals. I'm grateful for the opportunity to step outside of my comfort zone and be willing to go to a place unknown, uproot my family. I'm grateful that I had a family who trusts me enough to be willing to support my vision to transition here with me as well. I have spent, as my bio was read, the more I think about it, I probably should update that because it's actually been closer to 20 years in learning the leadership in the organizational development space. And yes, I've gone to school, I've got all the fancy degrees and all of that stuff, but really, as a person, I love learning. I love learning, I love engaging with individuals, I love understanding people's stories to give me a little bit more context of what it really means to engage with them in a very authentic way. And so, public information, not ashamed of it at all because it's a part of my story. I didn't graduate from high school with my graduating class. In fact, at the age of 18, I gave birth to my oldest son. And I realized at that time that life had new meaning for me. And I think up until that point, I thought it was all fun and games, and I just took whatever life threw my way. But at the point that I became responsible for another soul, for another life, life tended to get really, really serious for me at that moment. And at that point, I started to realize it wasn't about me, but it was about this little person that I was ultimately responsible for, ensuring that he didn't have to suffer through some of the things that I had to suffer through from the trauma that I experienced in my childhood. And I think if we don't spend enough time thinking about some of those situations that hinder us, and this is for people from all walks of life, if you don't spend time addressing those things that either you didn't celebrate and you know you did an amazing job, they were significant enough for you to recall even in this day and age, if you don't celebrate those wins, or if you don't deal with those conflicts, they tend to show up in life one way or another, and sometimes in our workspaces. And so as we talk about what it really takes to engage and support African American employees, I'm going to be very vulnerable and I'm going to be very transparent today. And I also want to provide this disclaimer to say I am not speaking on behalf of all African Americans. I'm speaking on behalf of Kristal and her experiences. But I can also tell you that my experiences mirror the experiences of many African Americans, Black people, and people of color. I also want to put out the disclaimer that while I work for Sweetwater, I love everything about Sweetwater, my perspective today is about Kristal's perspective and not necessarily about Sweetwater's, okay? I can tell you that Sweetwater is an advocate for diversity, equity, and inclusion because I'm there and I see the work that we're doing every single day. But I wanted to kind of lead into this session to let you know what I'm going to be sharing. You may have a different perspective, right? You may have a different experience. But what I'm telling you on this stage in front of you and all of the people who may potentially watch this is that this is my truth, okay? This is my family. And so when I am not doing anything on a professional front, I get to spend time with these crazy folk. And I like to say that leadership is first learned in the home, If I can learn how to lead them, if I can learn how to navigate their personalities, if I can learn how to build teamwork, this is the product of a blended family, what you're seeing. So my husband brought his family, I took my family, we brought it together, and we consider ourselves to be the hip, modern-day Brady Bunch. And what I love about our experiences the most is that it really taught me in the home how I am to engage and how I am to embrace and how I am to develop relationship currency when I step outside of my home. I always say, if you can lead well in your house, you can lead well in the White House. And it's true, right? I learned about team development and all those important things of what it really means to engage with people and understand that with our 10 children, we've got 10 different personalities, right? Who have 10 different perspectives of life, who will experience life on a different level. We teach our girls, just like we teach our boys, what it really means to be a productive member of society. And although most of our children are adults and they live still on the West Coast, when we have an opportunity to get together, oh, we have a time. And I remember when my husband and I first got together, we had a house full of teenagers and we couldn't believe what was happening to our world. How did this woman and this man who were dating and who fell in love with each other end up housing a bunch of teenagers and young children and work through all of that turmoil, and who can still stand strong 8 years later? But God, that's all I'll say about that. All right, so if I were to ask you all individually, how would you define culture? What does culture mean to you? I would anticipate I'd get definitions like it's a vibe, it's a flow, it's an attitude, possibly some similarities, differences. It's the norm, it's the way of life for a group of people, and all of your responses would be correct. But I think we've done ourselves some injustice over the last few years, especially with social unrest and everything that we see here in the community, where we've limited the definition of culture to only be associated with race, ethnicity, and identity. And if we limit our approach thinking about it from only that perspective, we miss the beauty of diversity that comes with this whole concept of culture. And diversity is not just limited to black and white. Culture is not just limited to race, ethnicity, or identity. And I'm going to prove it to you today, okay? So for a definition, I want us to use this working definition as we think about culture from this point forward, but especially for the context for our conversation today. So culture really is, it's a way of life to describe a group of people who share similar interests. Those interests can be anything, okay? Let me prove it to you. Here's an example that I like to use. How many people in this room love tacos? By show of hand. I see almost every hand in this room. Right? So if that is true, it's a way of life for a group of people who share similar interests, then it could be true that we have a culture of taco lovers here, right? And that's true. And I think we have to adopt that same mindset when it comes to all things that we could potentially share and engage with, some of the things that we value around. We are building culture every single day in the world around us, in the organizations that we spend time in, the most time, in our homes. Culture is happening around us every day. Said another way, culture can also be identified as the accepted norms. What's normal in this particular setting? What's normal among these group of people, right? What's also true is that cultures can be identified as a subset as well as a dominant group. All right. So again, using my taco example, how many of you prefer chicken tacos? Beef? Shrimp? Carnitas? All of that, right? That's all of us, right? So we have, even in the midst of this whole dominant culture setting here, you also have subcultures that exist. And that's important for context because, again, as we start to unpack and really explore diversity on the many fronts that exist in the world around us, there's so much of it. That within itself is the case for diversity. That's why it's important that we should support movements like this. And I know some people are just over the topic of diversity, equity, and inclusion overall, and that's okay, right? But if I got to replace that word diversity with culture so that you can be culturally intelligent and not culturally ignorant, I'll do what I got to do to get the message across, okay? When you think about subcultures and dominant cultures that exist even here in Fort Wayne, I did a little research, and just based off my observation overall, here's a very short list of cultures that I've identified here in Fort Wayne. We have a business culture, we have political culture, we have an education and a sports culture, we have a farming culture, we have Greek life culture. I've never met so many deltas and AKAs in my life. I knew they exist. I've just never been up close and personal oftentimes, right? We have a ministry culture, city full of churches, right? City full of servants, city full of people who are willing to come outside of their own and serve and support the well-being of others. That's culture. And it happens around us every single solitary day. And guess what? We also have a transplant culture. As we continue to invite individuals into this city, into this space, to help get with the mission and the vision around the city of Fort Wayne and Allen County, all of that matters to how we experience life every single day, how we engage with each other at work. And I'll dare to say it, it's not just enough to embrace African Americans in the workplace. I'm going to invite you to do it in your neighborhoods as well. Okay? Oftentimes, we think about culture from this perspective, right? We see everything at the surface level. And so we equate culture to food, to entertainment, to music, to arts, and all of those things. And it's because of that limited mindset that we aren't able to dive into the deep and really respect people for the different value that they bring to different situations, right? Attitudes, how we think about things is all culture. It impacts how we think about culture overall, our concept of our life, how we think about ourselves is culture. If I have a culture or a group of individuals who think highly of themselves and they're willing to thrive and they're willing to do whatever it takes to thrive, that's a culture of high performing and high thinking, high potential individuals. Likewise, if I have a group of people who haven't really discovered their value and their worth, and they're like-minded, and they're grouping, and they're growing, guess what? That's a culture as well. And the reality is, oftentimes, we coexist, whether we want to acknowledge it or not. Which leads me to my topic around why it's important that we grasp this concept of cultural intelligence. Okay? Cultural intelligence, by definition, it's having the capacity to be able to function effectively and successfully in cross-cultural situations. And I thought it was important to be able to share this particular definition because now, based on our new definition of culture, we're not just limited to things like a vibe or a norm or race, ethnicity, or identity. Now that we have this broader understanding and context for the word culture, to be culturally intelligent now is to be fully aware and engaged and to adopt this mindset of wondering. It's about transitioning from having a fixed mindset or a prescribed mindset to say, hey, this is this way because, to transitioning to say, you know what? I wonder why this is this way. I wonder why she has brown socks showing in these heels. Really, it's because I had on some socks today that I needed to be comfortable with. Not because I don't like to appear and dress right? My husband turned me on to these compression socks. Game changer, right? Game changer, right? But again, instead of having a prescribed mindset around how we think about things, what if we transition to having a mindset of curiosity and wondering? I'm a part of a 12-month Cultural Intelligence Fellows program that I've been engaging in this month, effective this month or last month now. And one of the things that the facilitator talked to us about, and these are people from all over the world who share various cultural backgrounds, different cultural backgrounds, people from Singapore to Canada to Israel, here in the United States. So we all come with very different perspectives of how we experience life. And one of the things that he told us as he kicked off the session, he said, listen, you are going to hear some things that are quite different from your norm. You're going to learn about some experiences and some ways of life that you've probably never heard of before. But instead of coming in with a prescribed mindset, I want you to have a mindset that you allow yourself to wonder and exercise the level of curiosity. And I'll share what he shared with me that was life-changing. He said the most powerful tool that you or anybody else can ever have is a question. And when he said that, it blew my mind, because in that moment, in a room full of these intellects and these thought leaders who are coming together to learn a little bit more about cultural intelligence, it gave us all the permission to be vulnerable. It gave us all the permission to say, you know what? I don't have the answers. I'm not the smartest person in the room. I wonder why this is. I wonder why, Kristal, you even signed up for such a program when you have all of these other things going on. I wonder why. And it permitted us to be able to ask questions instead of adopting our fixed mindset and calling something that it probably wasn't. And so to be culturally intelligent is to dive in, it's to wonder, it's to exercise a level of curiosity that will help you transition from one mindset to the next, so that you create a win-win in every situation that you find yourself in. So you're probably asking, how do I adopt this mindset? Before I lead into that, I want to say this. Cultural intelligence is different than emotional intelligence. And I want to point that out, because when you think about just this whole concept of intelligence overall, it's really about setting yourself up to be successful in that situation, or having the capacity to be able to function in whatever form of intelligence that you're trying to acquire. And so some cases, our skill set is a form of intelligence. We can do things that others may not have the capacity to be able to do, all right? How we flex and leverage our emotions, we call that emotional intelligence. So how aware are we when it comes to our emotions showing up in different settings? How do we regulate in the moment? How are we socially cued into what's going on around us so we know what to say and what not to say in certain situations? That requires a level of intelligence, believe it or not. And the better you get at it, in my way, I like to sum up the word emotional intelligence to be equated to maturity. It's a level of maturity that you just gain over time when it comes to asserting your emotions. But cultural intelligence is different than emotional intelligence, because, Megan, you and I can be in a room and we can be talking about something, and I can be laughing with you and giggling about something, and someone can overhear us and they can find what we're talking about as being completely offensive, because it could potentially impact or stir up something that's associated with their character or their culture. And if I'm not culturally aware, if I don't have any context of what we said and how it impacts their culture, or how it could potentially become effective, that's a challenge. So I want to bring something up as an example. There is a colloquialism that we use in the African American community, and it's been a thing that we've used for a long time. When we are super serious about something, or we want people to know that we are honest to the core of our souls, we'll say, I put that on everything. I put that on my life. I put that on my mama. That's on God, right? We'll go to those extremes, right? Fast forward, we've been saying that for a long time, right? That's a cultural thing that we've adopted. Now we have commercials with ex-football players who's using that same terminology to promote hot sauce. I put that ish on everything. And as I talk to people, I get it. From a marketing perspective, you want to use what sells. But if we aren't culturally intelligent to know how that might come across as offensive to a certain population, that could hit the wrong way. Guess what? In the same way that brand is looking to expand their market, it can also have the opposite effect. So it's things like that we have an opportunity to really dive into once we decide to, hey, I'm going to take this journey and I'm going to really learn what it means to be culturally intelligent. And so you may be asking yourself, well, what are the skills? How do you get there? And I'm glad you asked, because just like me, I like to have a framework or a blueprint so I have an understanding of how to get there. So this is a framework to adopting or moving along the journey of cultural intelligence. There's 4 areas to this framework, and it's cultural drive, or your CQ drive, your CQ knowledge, your CQ strategy, and your CQ action. okay? If you would like to learn more about this particular framework, the research behind cultural intelligence, you can visit culturalq.com, culturalq.com. And David Livermore and the other thought leaders who have done a body of research around cultural intelligence breaks this thing down to a science. So you know it's not something that I'm just making up here because I want to entertain you on a Wednesday afternoon on Black History Day, right? It is really a body of research that's been proven to be effective in multiple settings and multiple situations. So I'm going to walk you through and unpack each one of these areas. And as I do it, I also want to sort of weave in the Black experience or the African American experience or the people of color experience as we show up in your organizations. So the first one is CQ Drive. This is about motivation. What is your personal motivation for wanting to explore other cultures? Okay. Is it internal? Is it that intrinsic motivation that, hey, I just want to do this because there's a personal sense of fulfillment that I get to experience as I learn and develop myself to understand and to be successful in cross-cultural situations, all right? Is it external, right? There's some sort of award you can look forward to as a result of leveraging your knowledge in this way. So CQ Drive is about your motivation. How interested are you? And you'll be amazed at how many people are totally fine operating in a silo. They'll operate their entire life in a silo and not spend time engaging with people or things that are different from what they're used to. So cultural drive, CQ Drive is about having a personal motivation. And for some of us, our working relationships is what motivates us. We want to promote healthy working environments in the organizations for which we work for. That's our motivation, right? For some of us, we want to be able to leverage our personal influence. So maybe we are the individuals within our communities or our circle of influence who can gather a crowd, who recognize that your influence counts for something. And you know what? Because of that, I want to make sure that I'm engaged with what's happening in the world of people around me and those that I may find myself interacting with, okay? Maybe our motivation is birthed from our family dynamics. Maybe we have biracial family members, or maybe some of our families, I know mine does for sure, looks like a rainbow, right? It's personal to us because we literally have blood relatives, family members, children, parents in some cases, where it matters what the experience looks like and feels like on the outside of our home, okay? And then for others, we just want to stand in the gap to make sure that future generations aren't subject to a lot of this inequity and inequality as a result of their skin color. We're in it for the long haul. We're in it because we recognize we can't continue on having situations like Tyree Nichols or anything else in our community that tends to break us apart or break us down simply because of a skin color or some sort of systematic oppression or system. Okay, that's our drive. That's our personal motivation. We've come to develop great friendships and relationships with people from different cultural backgrounds. And what a shame it would be if I decided to stop talking to my friends who don't look or dress or talk like me because of some misunderstanding that's happening in society, or my ability to be motivated enough to step outside of my comfort zone and learn a little bit more about things that I'm not familiar with. Okay. The next in the framework is this concept, or the next step is called CQ Knowledge. And this is really about, I'm motivated now, I get it, I understand the significance and importance, or I've identified my why, but now here's where I want to take things up another notch, and I want to start exploring in detail the similarities and the differences between my cultural norms and those that I may find myself engaging with, okay? I am going to Singapore next month as part of this fellows program. And what I learned in Singapore, I realized that in order for me to be successful in that experience, I got to study the country. I want to know what's going on, right? I learned in my research that gum chewing, except prescribed by a dentist or a pharmacist, is against the law. You're shaking your head. You know exactly what I'm talking about, right? And so gum chewing is only permitted if you're purchasing or you have a prescription to gum that is nicotine related, if you're trying to kick a smoking habit. I'm so glad that I discovered that because I chew gum all the time. The last thing I want to do is go over there and get stuck, right? Because I wanted a piece of juicy fruit. Right? But what about the cultures and the communities that you may find yourself engaging in that you don't know, or you just want to exercise a little bit more curiosity because I just want to be successful in this particular environment? Right? How do I set myself up, whether it's your next meeting, whether it's, a company gathering or a gala, even a family member's house that you don't go to and visit often? Guess what? They have cultural norms in their home. Right? How can I set myself up? What do I need to know? How do they function in their home that's different from the way that I function in my home? And here's why it's important when you think about CQ knowledge to focus on not just the differences, but the similarities as well. Why? Because we are drawn to what we're familiar to. Go in any setting. We see it happen all the time at Sweetwater, right? You come in, you're out in the diner. If you don't have an intentional meeting, you're going to draw to the crowd that's familiar to you. You're going to draw to the audience that's familiar to you. And that's great. So our similarities draw, but our differences draw out that uniqueness about us. The differences allow us to add value to the settings that we find ourselves in. Okay? That's cultural knowledge, CQ knowledge. I really want to take you on a journey of the Black person, the African American, as it relates to CQ knowledge. And I want to explore from 4 ways. Our home, our heart, our head, and our hands. So when you think about the traditional African American home, you probably have all sorts of thoughts going in your mind. Guess what? I do too. But what you'll find in most African American homes is, you may have a home where there's a mother, a father. In some cases, a mother and a mother, or a father and a father. Or you may find yourself in a situation where you have a single father or a single mother, or whatever the dynamics of that home looks like. Let me tell you how that could potentially play in the role of an organization. So here's the thing. When you think about the home of African Americans, this is the place where we feel the safest. This is the place where we don't have to put on a front. And it's not like we go around and do that anyway, but this is the place where we can let our guards down, where we can be us, we can breathe, with or without the resources that we need. We make do. This is the place in me, 9 years of my adult life, I was a single parent. And so not only did I have to nurture my children, not only did I have to be the homemaker, but I also had to be the protector and the provider. And those are typically qualities of white men who have that responsibility for their home. And so while some families get the luxury of their wives having to stay at home or getting an opportunity to stay at home, and the man is out providing and being a protector, in my case, I had to wear all hats. And so the only place that I was not able to be exclusively me and bring my leadership and my thought process in was oftentimes at work. That was the place where I had to come subject to whatever was going on around me. But guess what? When I leave this organization, the minute I step foot out of here, I got to go back and put my leadership hat on and lead the world around me. Think about that adjustment every single day. That's a big ask. How does that relate to the work experience? Because this is the only place where I don't get to be authentically me. And not only that, in some cases, you like my idea, but I don't always get credit for it. Or I'm good enough to do this work, but I'm not good enough to be allowed into the boardroom. And even if I am allowed in the boardroom, my role is to be a fly on the wall and I can't speak. So when you think about the home and how the home dynamics even impact the work experience, it's real. And just because it's not on your radar to think about every single day doesn't mean that it's not happening. I've learned to become mature in knowing my place, period, in a workspace. So I'm not easily offended by things like that anymore. But I wanted to draw that connection because that started in my home. Okay? The other thing that you need to know about us as it relates to exploring similarities and differences is our hearts. We are some passionate folk. We love what we love. We love what we love, and we love to do what it is that we do. And typically, if you find an African-American person who is not exhibiting love and passion, it's probably because they're worn out. It's probably because they're operated from a very broken place. And they've not experienced that in so long to where now they're just dealing with whatever is coming out of them. Okay. Then there's our heads. If I can pull a couch up here and allow you all to be a fly on the wall in a therapy session, you probably laugh, you probably cry, you probably curse. But when you think about some of the things that are going through our heads as we walk into organizations with the anticipation of bringing our A game every day, some of the things that we have to deal with because of the color of our skin or because of racial injustice or because of systematic oppression and things weren't designed for us to win. At one point, depending on which document you read, we were 3/4 of a human being and then 3/5 of a human being. Like, we're still wrestling with all of that. And the residue from slavery back in 1740, I don't know if you know this, but back in 1740 in Virginia, not Virginia, I want to make sure, South Carolina, there were over 50 provisions in place in legal documents and systems that forced us to be obedient in any setting we went into. So we had to comply no matter what. And we still experience some of the residue of that when we aren't able to be our authentic selves, or when there's a mindset where people still see us as 3/5 or 3/4 of a human being. How do I know? We see it in redlining when it comes to preparing to purchase a home. We see it in the legal system. We see it in the housing system, the healthcare system and the educational system. These are all things that we see and we have to live with and deal with and come to work every day and smile like everything is all good. Okay? So some of the things that are in our head, we're tired. We're exhausted. We don't make excuses. This is just how we're feeling. If you want me to be completely real and transparent, I had an epiphany yesterday. I was sitting and I was thinking to myself, where would I be in my career if I had someone who says, Kristal, I see your potential. You have greatness all over you. And as a result, I'm going to use my influence to pour into you and cultivate what I know is already there. And I'm going to use that, and I'm going to make sure I walk alongside you until what I see in you is manifested. And I recognize in a professional setting, I've never had that. I've never had that. In a personal setting, I did have someone walk alongside me for 15 years and tell me what it was like just to be a classy young lady. And I'm grateful for all of those lessons because I couldn't stand up here today in front of you being a 44-year-old vice president of a company with the character that I had way back then. But I thought about that. Where would I be if I had someone in an organizational setting who was willing to walk that journey? And I'm not talking about giving me all the fluffy stuff. Kristal, your attitude sucks today. Sis, you need to get it together. That's not how you carry yourself in the boardroom. Hey, you are going to be up against this audience, and they don't want to hear about all of that crap that's going on in your home. Right now, you need to get it together and be the business professional that we need you to be for this setting. I wish I had that. I wish I had that level of support. I don't fuss and I don't cry because I didn't, but a lot of what I've learned in my hard knock life, trial and error. What to do and what to say. People not having the courage to correct me when I was wrong. And that's what I appreciated most about this personal mentor that I had. She was willing to go there. She was willing to dig deep. And I'm grateful for that because a lot of that has transferred over into my professional career. But what I learned and what I explored yesterday, I'm a high-impact goal planner. I love everything about goal planning and reflection and all that stuff. But as I was reflecting yesterday, January 31st, of everything that I've accomplished to date, I said, my spirit is weary. I'm weary because I feel like I have to keep chasing these rabbits and these carrots to experience a sense of security. And it is unlike people from other cultural backgrounds where they have someone looking out for them, or they have someone walking alongside their journey. It's not letting them off the hook, because there is work that has to be done. But I recognized my spirit was weary because I said, God, this can't be my life, where I'm just chasing rabbits and carrots and trying to find the thing that's going to make security for me and my family so I don't have to work so doggone hard. If you know me, I'm not bowing out as an excuse maker. I'll do the work and what's necessary to be done. But I said, what would my life be like if I had someone within my organization that say, you know what, I'm going to help you along the way and I'm going to see this thing through. Imagine if you could be that for someone. Okay. And then our hands, which pretty much leads into everything that I just shared. We bring a wealth of talent to your organizations every single day. The level of creativity that we have in our heads and our hearts, we bring it to your organizations every single day, but oftentimes it's stifled. It's stifled by perspective. It's stifled by cultural ignorance. It's stifled because we can't move forward because of this. And when you think about the talent that comes into your organizations by way of African American employees, it is funny to me how back in 1860, we had 4 million slaves in this country. 4 million slaves back in 1860. Said another way, we had 4 million individuals who were giving away free labor. That's equivalent to $3 billion in today's currency. So what do you mean we don't have the talent to move up in your organizations when we did it for free at one point? What do you mean we don't have the skill set to be able to navigate this particular conversation or that conversation when at one point we did it for free? At this point now, we just want the same opportunities that everyone else has. Okay? So when you explore and you start to think about African Americans and from a CQ knowledge perspective, what's different about my experience than that of those individuals? What's the same? Here's the same, we're all human. Maslow taught us in his hierarchy of needs that we got needs, we're all human. We all just want to have our needs met. Okay. Most of the time when we walk into organizations or in a lot of spaces, this is what it looks like in the world around us. We're the minority. We're having to adapt to whatever the cultural norm is in this setting, and that's okay. We really don't have a problem with that. That's totally okay. I used to say things like, man, I'm in this executive meeting or I'm in this board meeting and I'm the only one. And then my mindset shifted to where I'm the only one. Let me turn this thing around to a positive, right? But I want you to flip the script. Imagine if you were walking into a setting and the majority of the time you were the minority. And you had to adapt. What would it take for you to be successful knowing that everything and everybody around you is different and they share a cultural norm, and when they look at you, they feel like you're weird because you can't get with what they got going on? After a while, it goes from looking like this to like this. Now we're exhausted. Now we're tired. I just don't have the energy. Right? There's so many. I did some research even preparing for this moment. There's a lot of research, in fact, a couple dozen articles of why Black women are leaving corporate America in droves to start their own business. And part of it is this reasoning. It's just a level of exhaustion. Again, if I got to be the leader at home and the leader at work, and then I keep bumping up against turning myself on and turning myself off depending on the environment that I'm in, that's exhausting, it's tiring. I'd rather just put that same hustle and that same work and ethic and that same drive into building my own legacy. Okay. And then there's CQ strategy. This is the third element, CQ strategy. This is about preparing yourself. So I've taken the time, I'm motivated, I got that, check. I understand the similarities and differences, I got that, check. Now, what is my strategy as I prepare to go in and engage in these cross-cultural settings? What does it look like? What should I be thinking about if I know I want to be successful in this particular environment? What's my strategy overall? What kind of homework do I need to do? Right? Again, I'll use the Singapore example. I'm going there. What are the laws there? What's the weather? Right? My girlfriend told me, hey, where is the U.S. Embassy? You know what I mean? And so that's my strategy. I need an emergency contact list. Am I going to be going places to where I may potentially need a translator? I wouldn't know that if I didn't take the time to understand the similarities and the differences so I can work my strategy so that I can be successful in that environment. Okay? How can you prepare your strategy for your happenings every day when you leave this place? Think about the next meeting that you're preparing for. How many of you are going to be in the meeting sometime between now and the end of this week? What do you need to do? Who's going to be in that meeting? Oftentimes, we've gotten smart, so we know how to use our time, so we're not just signing up for meetings with no agendas. We get that, right? But go past the agenda. Who's in the meeting? What are some of their cultural norms? When's the last time you just had lunch with them or dinner with them or just talked to them by having a water cooler conversation just to see what they're up to? Right? Who's in the meeting and how do you need to prepare so you can ensure you're engaging everybody and that you're investing your time instead of spending your time? Okay. What about the next person that you bring onto your team? Right? What do you need to be mindful of as it relates to the opportunities on how you can support and engage an African American employee? Time out for there's not a lot of diversity in Fort Wayne, Indiana. Go get you somebody. Okay? Go find the diversity. Go find the talent that's willing to pick up and relocate and move here and invest in what you've already started. Okay? What about the next person that you have to promote on your team? Be sure you're not overlooking quiet talent. I'm not talking about quiet quitters. I'm talking about those who are coming in, giving their full capacity every single day. But for whatever reason, they just keep being looked over. Had a situation where it was a young man, African-American employee, who had been looked over for a promotion for 6 times throughout his career, 6 times. And his manager came to me and said, hey, I'm frustrated because I don't know how to deal with this employee. They think that I'm being discriminatory, but I'm really not because I'm listening to their conversations. And every time you talk to them, they're saying things like, I'm tired, I'm overwhelmed. And in my mind, I'm thinking, I can't dare put him in a supervisory role because if he's already tired and overwhelmed, it's only going to make matters worse. So I said, what's your conversation been like with this individual? He says, I'll talk to him and I say, well, I feel and I believe. I said, that's the problem. You got too many emotionally filled words within your conversation. Don't provoke your perspective on their potential. Here's what you do. Hey, I know you're interested in this role. You've been looking to move up. These are the expectations of the role. You're going to have to do A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, whatever it is. Even if you have to get into AA, BB, CC, DD. Right? But the goal is to outline the expectations up front and give that individual an opportunity to opt in. They may say, you know what, I can handle that. In fact, let me give you some examples of how I've handled that before. Or they may say, you know what, I didn't realize that the role came with all of that. I need to develop myself in a couple of areas. How can we partner together so that the next time this opportunity comes up, I'm in position to take it? It's easier to have that conversation if we aren't leading in, again, with that prescribed mindset. Okay? And then finally, what steps do you need to take when it comes to planning your next event? Right? Who's going to be there? Are you serving food? Have you considered dietary restrictions? Is there going to be music playing? What's the dress code? All of that impacts, as we saw from that iceberg, culture. What we believe is valuable, what we love about our experiences overall, we bring all of that with us. And then finally, there is CQ action. This is about our ability to be able to adapt our behavior when a situation calls for it. So think about it like this. I'm in a situation. We're having a conversation about music. I happen to love hip hop music. You happen to love jazz. We're having this conversation in live time, but the moment you hear that I love hip hop music and that's not something that you like, I see your whole facial expression change, right? That's really about being able to explore differences in real time in a conversation and still stand 10 toes down on what you believe and respect the opinions and the perspective of someone else, even if they're different. How do you need to adapt your behavior in certain situations? It's not about becoming a sellout or walking in a setting and you have to put on this imposter syndrome jacket. No, it's not about that. It's about staying true to who you are and what you believe and still respecting the differences and the opinions of others. That's CQ action. How do you adapt? Adapting can be difficult. It really can. You're asking me to change? Why? What do I get out of it? Why are you moving my cheese? What about this particular situation is going to benefit me? But I'll tell you, every time I've been required to adapt, it's built character. And oftentimes we confuse that word character with a person that's charismatic, right? We think because someone can get us all riled up and enthusiastic about something that they must have character. Guess what? I can get you all riled up and still be a liar. Right? I can get you all riled up and steal. So character is actually derived from the root word kasserai, which means chiseling or engraving or cutting or sharpening. And so character is developed through those life experiences that engrave or that cut us or that sharpen us in different situations. So if you aren't even willing to take this journey on cultural intelligence, we miss out on character development. Okay? Easy way to explain this, and I'll wrap up and close with this, is how do you have dinner at home? How do you have dinner at home? So some of us may say, you know what, I don't even have time for dinner. I'm going through the drive-thru. Right? Some of us have the luxury of being able to prepare the meal with our loved ones. Right? We make it a thing. It's a whole vibe. I love when I get a chance to cook with my husband. He does the meats, I do the sides, and we're like having a good time. We might even play some music and have a glass of wine. Right? Some of us, we prefer just to grab and go. Dinner is cooked. Let me go sit down. We're not sitting down at a formal table. We're just going to sit down and grab our food and eat it as we see fit. Some of us, we are meal preppers at heart. I'm not eating the meal if it's not prepped and I haven't counted my calories and all of that good stuff. But whatever you do, however you dine, is your cultural norm for dining. Do you agree? Now, what if I asked you to be my guest at a fine dining experience, 5-course meal? You were the distinguished guest. And I can tell you that coming into this experience, we are going to love on you. We are going to embrace you. The ambiance is going to be right. The music is going to be good. We've considered your meal options and all of that stuff. What about your normal dinner routine would you need to adapt in order to be successful in this fine dining experience? I probably have to go back and take a meal or a lesson on meal etiquette, place settings, so I know which way to pass the tray when the food is being passed around. Simple stuff that I don't have to consider in my normal dining routine. Okay? You might also be asking yourself questions like, well, would I even accept the invitation? Right? Maybe I've never experienced a fine dining moment, and what do you do? Like, am I going to be awkward or uncomfortable? What's going on here? That's CQ motivation. Okay? Or you may be asking yourself, well, what do I need to know in advance? How many people are going to be there? Like, we're among introverted folks who have to give an account for, hey, I'm going here. How many people are going to be there? Who's coming? How long are we going to be there? Because I need to know how much energy I have to preserve to entertain. Right? Who's going to be there? We want to know that. Right? That's our CQ knowledge. How can I ensure that I'm going to have a good time? What if I get here and the music is not what I anticipated? right? What's my strategy anyway? Maybe the music is not going to be what you anticipated, but how are you going to make the best of that moment anyway? Right? And then finally, we may be asking ourselves questions like, well, how will I need to adapt my behavior if the situation calls for it? Right? That's CQ action. When we think about the city of Fort Wayne overall and all of the brands that are here, I would like to say that everyone on this list, and this is obviously just a short list, I didn't capture all of the amazing brands, but I would imagine that every owner, every leader, every individual who worked within these organizations would like to equate their work environment to a fine dining experience. They want people to come in and enjoy the opportunity, to enjoy the ambiance, to enjoy the menu, to enjoy the music. But if we aren't intentional, we might miss that opportunity. And guess what we do when we don't like a good restaurant? We go straight to the reviews. Right? So think about that as it relates to your culture, your work organizations, how you can further support African American employees. And as I wrap up, I just want to say a couple things as it relates to our experience overall. Here's what I would love for you to know. And in this case, I think I can speak for all of us. We chose your organization in the same way your organization chose us. We had job opportunities. Some of us, again, we got those gifts in our hands. We can go anywhere just like anybody can. But we chose to come to your organizations to help build, to help support, to help expand your vision and your mission overall. We want the same opportunities that everyone else has in order to be successful. We don't want to be overlooked for promotions and opportunities and career steps. We don't always want to just make it up to the first level of leadership, and that's good enough because we can say we've diversified our management team. We want to be held accountable. Despite popular belief, we're not lazy. We want to be held accountable. We want goals. We want objectives. We want to be incentivized and rewarded at the end of the year, but we want that feedback. And then finally, we want to use our hands to bring out the greatness of your organizational brains. You know just as well as I know, you can't do the work on your own. I am so grateful for my team. I really am, because I'm only one person. And I realize it doesn't matter how big my vision is or how big my work is, I got to be mindful not to take my pint-sized vision and pour it into pint-sized vision holders, right? I got to be able to meet people where they are, and that's super important to me, and that's all we want. So as I close, I just want to say thank you for your time this afternoon. Thank you for lending your ear. Thank you for coming out on this Wednesday afternoon as we kick off Black History Month here with Allen County. I hope that you would consider something that I've said. If you can take away one thing that I've said today, and that really is to explore the difference between being culturally intelligent and being culturally ignorant. I would prefer you be the former. All right. Thank you, everybody.
Can you stay with me for a moment? Absolutely. I wasn't kidding. She's really the real deal. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
So much for being here. We have some ACPL swag for
Oh,
you to
thank
take
you.
with you today.
Thank you. I appreciate
We're so
that.
grateful. I would like to invite all of you to think for a moment about what dinner is like at your house, and maybe that's a good question to ask somebody you might meet in the lobby while you enjoy some snacks from Elijah's Bakery. A good entree into talking about your cultural intelligence experience and what you might take away from what you learned today. If you're from an organization that has interest in learning more about these kinds of things, please come and see me, because we are eager to provide programming at Allen County Public Library that will support our whole community, including all of our workplaces. And Dr. Walker will be out to chat if you have questions for her in just a few moments. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
Production facilities provided by Access Fort Wayne. Learn more under the Explore tab at acpl.info.